Michael had always been protective of his elderly mother, Cathy. As she got older, mobility became an increasing challenge. First, she relied on a cane, then a walker, and eventually she needed a wheelchair to move around safely. Despite this change, Michael and his wife Loretta worked tirelessly to ensure Cathy's home was safe. They installed a stair lift, grab bars, and anti-slip mats to prevent falls. They even hired Nicole, a professional caregiver, to assist with daily tasks. So when Cathy began falling out of her wheelchair repeatedly, it raised major concerns. At first, Cathy dismissed the incidents as clumsy accidents, reassuring her family that she was simply getting older and weaker. But Michael wasn't convinced. How could she be falling so often when everything had been done to keep her safe? Something wasn't right. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Michael installed hidden security cameras around the house. If Cathy wasn't willing to admit what was happening, the footage would reveal the truth. What he saw shattered him to his core. Michael sat in front of his laptop, heart pounding, as he scrolled through the surveillance footage. He expected to see Cathy losing balance or slipping, but what he actually saw was far worse. His hands trembled as he rewound the video, watching it again, this time frame by frame to make sure he wasn't imagining things. "Oh my God," he whispered under his breath. Loretta, hearing the shock in his voice, rushed over. "Michael! What's wrong?" she asked, concerned. Michael's face had turned pale as a sheet. "You need to see this," he whispered, turning the laptop screen toward her. The moment Loretta saw the footage, she gasped in horror, covering her mouth. "This cannot be happening," she muttered. "We need to call the police." Michael, however, had another idea. "No," he said, eyes dark with determination. "I've got a better plan." Without a second thought, he grabbed his car keys and sped toward his mother's house. Michael's heart hammered in his chest as he pulled into the driveway. His mother had given him a spare key, so he didn't bother knocking. "Mom, where are you?" he called out, stepping inside. No response. The house was eerily silent. The lights were still on. The door was unlocked, but Cathy was nowhere to be found. A wave of dread washed over him. Something wasn't right. "Is anyone here?" he asked, voice shaky. Still, nothing. Then, just as he turned the corner into the living room, he froze in place. His breath hitched, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. With trembling hands, he grabbed his phone. This time, he listened to Loretta's advice. He called the police. Michael had thought back to how it all started. Cathy had always been independent, even as her mobility declined. At first, she used a cane, then a walker, and finally, a wheelchair. She struggled to accept the change, but Michael always reassured her. "You're doing great, Mom. We're here for you." He and Loretta visited daily, bringing meals, groceries, and checking in. They even hired Nicole, a professional caregiver, to help with daily tasks. Nicole was highly recommended, had excellent reviews, and seemed genuinely kind. At least, that's what they thought. Until Cathy began showing up with bruises. One afternoon, Loretta came home looking shaken. "Honey, your mother," she started, her voice trembling. Michael's heart dropped. "What is it? Is she okay?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice. Loretta hesitated, then finally blurted it out. "She has bruises all over her arms and face." Michael's stomach twisted. "What? How?" "She says she fell out of her wheelchair. Again." Michael felt sick. His mother wasn't clumsy. She was careful, cautious, always mindful of her movements. There was no way she could be falling this often, not without something else going on. Determined to ensure Cathy's safety, Michael made a crucial decision. He hired a caregiver. Nicole seemed perfect. She was warm, soft-spoken, and experienced in elderly care. Cathy liked her. "She's very sweet," she had said. "I'm glad to have her help." Michael checked in regularly, and for a while everything seemed fine, until one day when he dropped by unannounced, and what he saw shook him to the core. Michael had stopped by to have tea with his mother, something they did often. The moment she opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. Cathy's face was bruised again. "Mom, what happened?" Cathy sighed, looking away. "It's nothing, dear. I was just being clumsy again." Michael felt a wave of frustration and fear wash over him. "Mom, this is the third time this month. Something isn't right." Cathy forced a weak smile, but Michael could see the sadness in her eyes. "Don't worry so much, sweetheart. I'm just getting old." But Michael wasn't convinced, and that night he made a decision that would change everything. He set up hidden cameras in the house, and what they captured? It changed everything. Michael couldn't sleep that night. The images from the footage played over and over in his mind. His mother's frail form falling from her wheelchair, the sickening thud as she hit the ground. But what haunted him most, Nicole was the one pushing her. Not an accident, not a slip, not clumsiness, a deliberate shove. And the worst part? Nicole just stood there and watched. She didn't rush to help. She didn't call for assistance. She simply walked away. Michael felt rage like never before. He had trusted this woman. "She had one job," he muttered, his fists clenched. "To care for my mother." Loretta, sitting beside him, was equally shaken. "We have to call the police," she insisted. Michael hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "First, I need to make sure Mom is okay." And with that, he grabbed his keys and sped to his mother's house. Michael burst through the front door, calling for his mother. "Mom, where are you?" Silence. A cold chill ran down his spine. The house wasn't right. The lights were on, the door was unlocked, but there was no sign of Cathy. "Mom, answer me!" he yelled, his voice echoing off the walls. He moved quickly, checking the living room, the kitchen, her bedroom. Nothing. Then he spotted something on the floor near her wheelchair. His stomach dropped. Blood. A single drop, smeared on the tile. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone. This time he did what Loretta had suggested all along. He called the police. Within minutes, sirens blared outside. Detective Harris, a tall man with sharp eyes, took the lead. "Tell me everything," he said. Michael wasted no time explaining the hidden cameras, the footage, the bruises, and now, his missing mother. Harris's jaw tightened. "Let's check the footage." They sat in front of the laptop, watching as the truth unfolded. And what they saw? It was worse than Michael had imagined. A sinister motive uncovered. The footage didn't just show Nicole pushing Cathy. It showed something else, something Michael hadn't noticed before. Nicole was going through Cathy's belongings. "What is she looking for?" Loretta whispered. Michael's blood ran cold. He thought back to something his mother had mentioned weeks ago. "You know, dear, I've had some old investments for years. I never touched them." At the time, Michael had brushed it off. Now, he realized. Nicole must have overheard. "She's not just hurting her," Michael murmured. "She's looking for something." Detective Harris nodded grimly. "We need to bring her in." The next morning, Nicole arrived at Cathy's house, pretending like nothing had happened. But as she walked inside, she was met with flashing red and blue lights. "Nicole James, you are under arrest for elder abuse and suspected financial theft," an officer announced. Nicole's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, I didn't." Her denials fell on deaf ears. Michael stood nearby, watching as the woman he had once trusted was led away in handcuffs. But one question still burned in his mind. Where was his mother? The police began searching Nicole's belongings, looking for anything that could explain her true motives. What they found: a detailed notebook. Inside, Nicole had written dates, locations, notes about Cathy's financial statements, and most chillingly, a list of times when Cathy was alone. But that wasn't all. There were text messages. "We can't do it now. She's always around. We have to wait for the right moment." Michael's stomach turned. Nicole wasn't working alone. Someone else was involved. "Who was she texting?" Detective Harris demanded. A few minutes later, they had the answer. "His name is Mark," an officer said. "Nicole's boyfriend." Michael's blood ran cold. He had known Mark for years, a trusted family friend. "I can't believe it's him," Michael whispered. And then Detective Harris's phone rang. "We found Cathy." The officers arrived at a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. Inside, they found Mark, along with Cathy. She was shaken, but unharmed. "Mom!" Michael rushed to her side, wrapping his arms around her. Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't know what was happening," she whispered. "Nicole said she was taking me to the doctor, but then we came here. I was so scared." Mark, standing in handcuffs, glared at the floor. Detective Harris looked at him, disgusted. "What was the plan, Mark?" Mark hesitated, then finally muttered, "The money! We thought she had money hidden. Nicole was supposed to pressure her into telling us." Michael's hands curled into fists. They had terrorized his mother over greed. But now it was over. Nicole and Mark were both charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, and kidnapping. The judge didn't go easy on them. Michael and Loretta upgraded Cathy's security. They hired a new, trusted caregiver and arranged for a close friend to check in daily. "You're never alone, Mom," Michael reassured her. Cathy, holding her son's hand, smiled through grateful tears. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Final thoughts. A lesson for all families. This case was a stark reminder. Not everyone who seems kind can be trusted. Elder abuse is far more common than people think. If you suspect something isn't right with a loved one, trust your instincts. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Because family will always stand between you and the darkness.